from Reuters. This one reports that U.S. troops have been rotating into Taiwan for training. Now, important to note, and at least Reuters often does this in their titles, especially when it's an unnamed source. They just have sources for this. Two unnamed sources say that a small number of U.S. Special Operation Forces have been rotating into Taiwan on a temporary basis to carry out training of Taiwanese forces. And it's just two sources familiar with the matter speaking on the condition of anonymity. The Pentagon did not confirm or deny it. The statement from a Pentagon spokesperson, John Supple: "I do not have any comments on specific operations, engagements, or training, but I would like to highlight that our support for the defense relationship with Taiwan remains aligned against the current threat posed by the People's Republic of China." And so this is not confirmation or denial. In the article, they did get a statement from Democratic Representative Amy Barra, who leads the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Asia, and she said, "Not particularly this deployment, if I call it a deployment. I think we have special operators and others there, and we have in the past. They're training Taiwan's military, working with them." And so that seems to be a little bit of a confirmation to me that a representative who would be in the know, essentially confirming that, like, I don't know if it's happening this time, and I wouldn't even call it a deployment, but yeah, special operators do go to Taiwan and work with the military there. So this is an interesting development that we're getting at least somewhat official statements on it, and I'm guessing that, at least in the U.S. mainstream, this isn't thought to be confirmed news, and I guess there is still reason to speculate, but we do know and know for sure, like, we sail warships through the Taiwan Strait, that the U.S. provides Taiwan with military training in Taiwan when we sell them different weapon systems. And then also we had like a U.S. Coast Guard a ship that was deployed there for training, but also does provocative things towards China, like sail the warships, the Coast Guard ship, a cutter, through the Taiwan Strait. And so this has been going on. It shouldn't come as a complete surprise, but it is one of the more official confirmations of it. Now, it's possible that with this becoming a little bit more public, we could see some kind of reaction from China, or it's worth thinking about that maybe some of the actions that we've seen from China, like flying over the southwestern corner of Taiwan's air defense identification zone, which is way the hell out into the sea. And as we talked about in the last show with Dave DeCamp, it isn't like flying over Taiwan's airspace or anything like that. However, that these actions are somewhat provocative and could somewhat be explained by the U.S. training that has been going on in Taiwan, that could have been in part a Chinese reaction. Now, I do think we could see an increased Chinese reaction if they didn't know this was going on, which I kind of doubt, or with it becoming public, they feel like they need some kind of response because this is provocative by the U.S. to be training a country at odds with not a country, Taiwan, which is, even by the U.S. recognized status as just being in exile from China, right? We have the one China policy that, there's one government that controls China and Taiwan. Maybe the U.S. just disputes what government that should be. So we could see in the coming days maybe an increased reaction, or like I said, maybe China has already been reacting to this and we're not going to see anything from it. But this is an interesting confirmation, and certainly a topic that we need to stay aware of, just how much the U.S. military is starting to embed itself in Taiwan. There's been some polling and a lot of analysis lately on, and we talked about this a little bit on the last show with Dave DeCamp, that there's an increasing amount of Americans who are prepared, or release who say they are prepared to go to Taiwan or to send troops to Taiwan to defend the island from China. I think this is largely been increased just with the overall anti-China rhetoric that, I've been warning about on conflicts of interest and foreign policy focus going back 4 years now, saying that this was going to be one of the real consequences of the U.S. destroying its economic relationship in Trump's trade war with China was going to be we are going to be locked into this trade war, which has absolutely happened. The Biden administration has remained committed to it. And then the other issue is that as you destroy the economic relationship with China, made China into more and more of an enemy, even if it's just on the economic side, of course, propaganda that comes with that is going to be militarist as well. The military industrial complex is certainly going to get in on it. But then too, just as the economic relationship is destroyed, more Americans are willing to say that, hey, we'll go defend Taiwan. And this is obviously something that could put the U.S. in a very dangerous position. Now, one of the things that people, and especially in the anti-war community, my friend Dan Wright was one of the loudest and best among them in his satire of it. But, when they ask this question, well, are you willing to defend American troops, to send American troops to defend Taiwan? Typically Americans are just thinking like, yeah, we'll put some troops there and it won't be an issue. Now, are you willing to risk war with China over Taiwan, which I think would probably elicit a somewhat different polling result from the Americans, although the war propaganda has been somewhat effective, and I do imagine that a lot of Americans would even be for that. Along with the U.S. Increasingly provocative towards China, you also have the U.K., not quite the U.S. pivot towards China, which we started in the Obama administration, ramped up only in the two successive ones. But the U.K. is talking about a tilt to the Indo-Pacific. As a part of this, their new aircraft carrier, the HMS Queen Elizabeth, stopped in Singapore. Of course, it's loaded up with high-tech airplanes and definitely, a threatening presence towards China. And they are also planning to deploy 2 warships to Japan to continue provocative actions like these freedom of navigation exercises in the South China Sea or those going through the Taiwan Strait. One last story on China, and that is there were talks between China and India, and this was written up by Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com. Talks between China and India to diffuse border tensions fail. So the two sides are saying it's the other side's fault, but this is in the Himalayas, the top of the world. And if you want a really in-depth take on like the history of this, you need to read Eric Margulies' book, We're at the Top of the World. It's just the absolute most important take on this. But for a quick summary, there are pretty significant territorial disputes in the region between Pakistan, China, and India in the Himalayas, and Jammu and Kashmir, and then along what they call the line of control in these two areas, where you have again very tenuous borders between Pakistan, India, and Kashmir, and then China and India along the Himalayas, right along the mountain range there. And so this has escalated in the past to fighting. Most recently, the fighting was not done with weapons, but rather, maybe melee weapons. They said, boards and no guns or anything like that, but it ended up killing a few score of soldiers on each side. And of course, these are 2 nuclear weapons states. And this is a very, very dangerous, intense situation where if you did have, say, a little skirmish breakout, it could escalate relatively quickly here. And of course, with the U.S. more and more siding with India and telling India that we want you to position yourself alongside the U.S. against China, I'm sure certainly at least India thinks that part of that means that India will be, or the U.S. will be backing India in its territorial claims against China. And so you have to wonder if maybe part of the reason that India would take a more conciliatory message is they feel like they have the backing of the world empire at this point. just an idea. Not saying that that's for sure the case. This has been a long-standing conflict, but certainly it seems that the more India becomes embroiled in the U.S. Quad dialogue, which isn't quite an alliance, but it is like a defense pact agreement, and I guess there's no like official thing signed. But the idea that the U.S. has is it'll align itself with Australia, Japan, and India against China, and then wrap in what it probably considers like the lesser states in the region: Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, and kind of focus everyone in the region against China. So maybe if India sees this on the horizon, they're going to be, like I said before, less likely to take a conciliatory approach with China over this, because they feel like that with the attentions to come, maybe there'll be room to exploit and add to their territory, and establish the lines of control in the region that they want to. All right, moving on to talk about